dias from Laos Point. This is the Rorschach Argentina update from the 6th of August, 2026. A quick summary of what's going down in Argentina. Let's start with an update on a story from last week regarding diplomatic tensions between Argentina and Brazil. The Brazilian government officially downgraded diplomatic relations with Argentina, permanently recalling its ambassador to Buenos Aires, Julio Vitelli, and requesting that Argentina's ambassador to Brasilia, Daniel Raimondi, return to Buenos Aires. The downgrade followed interviews where President Milei doubled down on personal insults against the Brazilian president, calling him corrupt, a thief, and a convict. Both nations will now maintain representation through a charge d'affaires. Pablo Quirno, the foreign minister, stated that Argentina will not take retaliatory diplomatic action. While the executive branch navigates international tensions, it had to make concessions on domestic legislation in Congress. Facing resistance from opposition and allied lawmakers, the government modified its controversial land reform bill ahead of a Senate vote. Patricia Bullrich, leader of the La Libertad Avanza caucus in the Senate, announced on Tuesday the 4th that the revised text sets a 25% cap on foreign ownership of productive rural land per provincial district. The modification steps back from the administration's original proposal to eliminate all selling restrictions, while the current law caps foreign ownership at 15% across national, provincial, and municipal levels. In other news involving domestic policy controversies, a major dispute at sea reached a temporary solution. A nationwide strike by maritime pilots left over 140 commercial cargo vessels stranded across major export ports. The pilots stopped accepting new assignments over the weekend after President Milei and Federico Sturzenegger, the deregulation minister, issued a decree deregulating the profession. The Coast Guard issued back-to-work orders warning of legal actions. However, both sides reached an agreement on Tuesday the 4th. The pilots agreed to a 20% rate reduction and resumed navigation services, while the government suspended the deregulation decree and established a joint working group to review sector rules. Since we mentioned executive decrees, President Milei is already planning his political future and pushing new legislative priorities. In an interview published on Monday the 3rd, Milei confirmed that he chose his running mate for the 2027 presidential elections, though he kept the candidate's identity secret. The announcement confirms a complete political break with Victoria Villarruel, the vice president, as the two leaders are no longer on speaking terms. Turning to foreign policy and territorial claims, Milei outlined his diplomatic vision for the South Atlantic. During a radio interview, Milei asserted that Argentina's strategic alignment with the United States holds the key to recovering sovereignty over the Malvinas Islands. Milei argued that Washington needs a reliable partner along the passage from the Atlantic to the Pacific. However, Washington maintains its historical stance of strict neutrality regarding the sovereignty dispute. Milei also asserted that the United Nations is forcing the United Kingdom into bilateral talks, though non-binding UN resolutions urging negotiations have existed for decades without British participation. For those looking to explore how historical conflict intertwines with local arts, a recommended read. Writing for the Buenos Aires Herald in English, Marcelo Fernandez Bitar explores the deep mark left by the 1982 South Atlantic conflict in an essay titled A Time We Cannot Understand: How the Malvinas War Runs Through Argentine Culture. The author traces how music, literature, theater, and cinema have consistently kept memory, personal trauma, and national identity alive across generations. To read the full piece, check out the link in the show notes. On that note about national borders, the executive branch issued new immigration rules. Milei signed an emergency decree allowing authorities to deny entry, revoke residence permits, or deport foreign nationals who express or incite hate, violence, or discrimination against Argentines or desecrate national symbols. Executive officials cited online hostility during the 2026 World Cup to justify the measure, while clarifying that legitimate political and academic criticism remains protected. However, constitutional scholars and opposition lawmakers criticize the decree as unconstitutional and overly vague. Shifting focus from immigration policy to domestic economic indicators. New data highlights growing financial pressures on households. Private sector estimates based on figures from the National Institute of Statistics and Censuses, or INDEC, reveal that urban poverty reached almost 31% during the first quarter of 2026. The increase represents roughly 600,000 people falling into poverty since late 2025. Researchers at the Torquemada de Tella University project that the rate climbed further to almost 33% in the second quarter, bringing the total urban poor population to nearly 9.5 million people. Analysts attribute the rise to persistent inflation, steep public utility rate hikes, and stagnant household incomes. In addition to rising poverty, household debt default rates have reached record highs. A report by the Argentine Institute for Fiscal Analysis shows that real earnings remain below pre-administration levels across key sectors. Public sector workers suffered the steepest purchasing power loss at 36%, while private sector wages slipped 4%. Concurrently, central bank data shows that household debt delinquency rose for the 19th consecutive month in May to nearly 13%, with non-bank loan defaults exceeding 32%. President Milei responded that loan repayments represent private contracts between individuals and financial institutions, ruling out government intervention. From financial pressures to foreign commerce, a structural shift is reshaping Argentina's balance of trade. Official statistics reveal that crude oil became Argentina's leading export during the first half of 2026, generating $4.7 billion and surpassing traditional agricultural products like corn and soybean meal. Rapid output growth at the Vaca Muerta shale formation in Patagonia drove a 48% increase in oil export revenues and compared to last year. Meanwhile, soybean sales slowed significantly, with farmers selling only 29% of total harvest by mid-July, compared to the historical average of 41%, as surging energy and mining revenues reduced immediate economic pressure to liquidate crops. While energy exports surge, foreign automotive brands are transforming the domestic retail market. Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer BYD entered the top 10 auto sellers in Argentina this year, opening dealerships nationwide alongside brands like BAIC, MG, and Chery. The commercial surge follows a government policy establishing a duty-free import quota of 50,000 electric vehicles with low price ceilings that favor Chinese automakers. Despite strong political alignment with Washington, China surpassed Brazil as Argentina's primary source of imports in 2026, helping lower relative vehicle purchasing costs by 26% since late 2023. Leaving automotive trade behind, the Vatican confirmed on Wednesday the 5th that Pope Leo XIV will undertake a South American tour in November, visiting Argentina from the 8th to the 11th of November. The itinerary includes stops in Buenos Aires and the central province of Córdoba, alongside visits to Uruguay and Peru. President Milei celebrated the official announcement on social media, describing the event as a historic moment for the country. The trip will mark the first papal visit to Argentina since Pope John Paul II visited in 1987. From educational commentary to live entertainment, local music fans demonstrated their famous passion once again. Ronnie Wood, the legendary guitarist, sold out his upcoming concert at the Movistar Arena in Buenos Aires within minutes of ticket release on Tuesday the 4th. Scheduled for the 6th of November, the show forms part of his world tour celebrating his career compilation album. Local concertgoers view the rapid sellout as another tribute to the Rolling Stones, who have played 15 sold-out stadium shows in Argentina since 1995. Before we sign off, here is a quick calendar reminder for everyone living in Argentina. Monday, the 17th of August, is a national public holiday commemorating General José de San Martín Day. San Martín, the country's principal founding father and liberator, who led independence campaigns across Argentina, Chile, and Peru during the early 19th century. Expect government offices, banks, schools, and many private businesses to remain closed for the 3-day weekend. And that's it for this week. Thank you for joining us. Anything to ask or tell us, email us at info@rorschach.com. Nos vemos la próxima semana.